Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Wish Me Well, and we're just gonna go over another market recap. Today is April 10th. As you can see straight away, we did get pretty much a one-sided direction over London or actually New York. Pretty much was a one-sided directional move, continuing to drop for lower and lower prices. We did have this massive move yesterday. I remember I said I was going to find out why we had such a major move, and it was because our president said that we were going to have a 90-day brief relief on the tariffs. So that shot the market straight up. We did end up rebalancing from the low that day. Ended up rebalancing to 50% in New York. We reached that 50%, and then we started to climb up during PM session. So I just thought that was interesting as well to point out. And yeah, so that's something to have looked at there when it came to point of interest. We did retrace back to the 50%. Now going into New York, we had taken Asia low, as you can see here. We had starting off right after Asia. Asia had a one directional move, so it would have been a nice short opportunity if you were able to get in after a market structure shift on the 5-minute. Really only gave us one opportunity here and here. I think this would have been the cleanest setup there, maybe for a stops above most recent high as normal. 1 to 2R, not really sure. You would have, who knows, at the end of the day, whether your spreads would have taken you out on something like that. Nevertheless, if you would have simply look for shorts, this is only on the 5-minute. I'm sure, let's go to the 1 minute or the 3-minute. I'm sure you can always nitpick a entry on the 1 minute, which is not as reasonable of a strong of an argument, but we did get a entry here, swing, pull back, and rejection. It says valid, probably not in my opinion, but we were actually looking at the entry that was here. Refinement there, maybe taking a nice 1 to 2 RR for a nice little trade there. Could have been possible. It's really up to you whether or not you would have wanted to take an entry from there. If you're a 1-minute trader, I'm sure let's just entertain you using multiple time frames and just watching it careful enough to actually make decisions on the 1 minute. Let's see what it had to offer. Oh, we can't even go that far back. So in my settings, I don't have my signals set that far back when it comes to fair value gap signals, but you could have taken one there. Let's see. You can just spot this out yourself, in all honesty. Break a structure here. Break a structure here. No immediate pullback on the third candle. No immediate pullback. There's one here. There's one here. So this would have been an entry. Stops above the high. Target of 1 and 2. Nice 3 candle, maybe 1 to 3. At the 1 minute, you should probably be aiming for more than a 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, maybe 1 to 3, something like that. Wouldn't take anything here, although we did inverse this bullish to continue down. Then we get a market structure shift here, break a structure. Then we start to climb back up. At this point in time, after this break a structure, this didn't break, the high broke, this stayed strong, and then we consolidated, which would have been something to be very cautious about during this time, because it's not giving us clear directional moves like this. It really started to consolidate. After seeing a market structure shift, you just want to be super careful. In general, this is not just something that I personally would have said, oh, I wouldn't have been confused on what's going on here. It does definitely look confusing. But after seeing a market structure shift to the opposite side, knowing very well that at this point, a lot of price action is just telling me I just want to be looking for shorts. This, I would have just personally just waited to see if this market structure shift was actually going to continue down and then give us a break structure, and it actually starts to show us that we're moving up higher. So at this point, this market structure shift here is nothing significant, although I wouldn't immediately start to see if I can jump into longs. I would actually, like I said, start to look for breaker structures, market structure shifts. Breaker structures, pull back, and just higher highs and higher lows to confirm that this is actually something significant and not just a random breaker structure to the upside. So internally, we got our market structure back down to the downside, which is in alignment with the whole entire move that we see here. Pull back, as you saw here, pull back into the fair value gap there, here, and then like I said, you could have done a 1 to 1, 1 to 2. In this case, you probably could have had your stops maybe a little lower because you are refining to the 1 minute entry model. So you can see breaker structure, market structure shift. So this is what I'm talking about. We get a breaker structure to the downside, then we get a market structure shift to the upside, all right? Which is not the cleanest breaker in my opinion, but nevertheless one I would consider a breaker. And then you also see that indication that price did come back into that breaker to continue higher. But as you see here, we see the market structure shift, we see price pull up, pull back, giving us a higher low, and then continuing higher, giving us that indication that this is something more than just a random breaker structure or a market structure shift to the upside, and it's not just one of the random market structure shifts like a buy stop sweep of liquidity. But nevertheless, you still want to be cautious and look for more confirmation, not just a consecutive market structure shift breaker structure. Although this would be enough to tell you that we are in a pullback, not just a liquidity sweep. So market structure shift alone, probably take into consideration. Maybe it's just the market liquidity sweep of buy stops in order to continue down in the bearish order flow. If you get a market structure shift and a breaker structure, you kind of want to take into consideration maybe this is a micro pullback on the lower time frame, and we will eventually turn back to bearish market structure once this pullback is finished. So that's what you would think in your mind if you see a market structure shift and a breaker structure. So we get that high, get that pullback. Pullback was a little deeper, so it gave us a market structure shift to the downside, and then an immediate market structure shift back to the upside, giving us, and then you guys understand order flow or market structure telling us that this is a bullish market structure. Continuing getting a pullback and then continuing all the way up. Nothing strong enough for us to get another breaker structure. Just continue to break highs on the lower time frame. So if you go even lower, you'll see breaker structure here, breaker structure, breaker structure, breaker structure. None of these lows were taken. And then we get the market structure shift down. So you guys understand. You guys understand at this point. But what I really want to point out is when we're on the 1 minute, things that really should be sticking out to you when you're seeing market structure, when you're in a pullback and you're seeing market structure in this type of situation, things that really should point out to you is when swing structures are being swept or swing structures are being created. In this case, we are in a pullback, but we are also generally in a bearish order flow. Taking in consideration that we needed some correction off these massive moves we had in the evening of the previous day session, we get, like I said, we get the pullback. In this case, like I said, if you are anticipating a correction, a rebalancing of the massive move that we had the previous day, you including just the bearish order flow you're seeing here, also taking into consideration on the higher time frame, this is what our order flow is looking like, or market structure is looking like. Low, market structure shift, breaker structure, indicating that we're starting a pullback all the way up here, and then breaker structure to the downside, telling us that we are now potentially not, you just never know 100% for sure, but market structure telling us that we are now back on the second leg of this market structure, bearish market structure, and we're back in alignment with the higher time frame order flow, which would be heading down. So just taking that in consideration, you see that a market structure shift was immediately swept, having massive bearish price action come in here, and then you just start seeing market structure shift, immediate pullback into a fair value gap there. You could target Asia low for a 1 to 4 and maybe a 1 to 3 there. It all depends what you wanted to target. I do personally think 300 ticks or 63 points as a huge stop loss. Is it realistic for NQ? No, not really. MNQ more likely something that you could probably handle. Right now this is the MQ chart, but since price moves generally the same, not exactly the same, but generally the same between NQ and MNQ, you can kind of get the picture. So we see price move down, breaker structure, massive move down, buyback here, something interesting to look at, breaker structure, then we see price start to move up, market structure, break structure. So internal structure is telling us that we are now moving in a new direction, which would be from bearish to bullish, going all the way up. market structure shift here, breaker structure, breaker structure, breaker structure, all bullish, all bearish, actually all bearish. And then we see just minor bullish market structure mixed in, just telling us as we continue moving down, we're going to liquidate, buy stops and grab liquidity here, 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 and here as we continue to push price down. And then we're just doing that right up until 9 a.m. You can see like at 8 is when we start. 8 o'clock is right around here. You actually start to see between 8 and 8:30 we start to just liquidate, buy stops, start triggering buy stops, buy stop, buy stop. And then we go into the 9:30, which we chop around a lot, and then we continue down. And then the rest of the day was just slow trickling down of price action. If your bias was bearish, like I said, anticipating a correction from the massive push up in price the day before, you would have looked for a fair value gap entry to the downside, targeting lows, targeting any type of low you could. Here, as you can see here, we got this entry at the breaker structure. Wouldn't have gone anywhere significant due to this massive pushback up. Coming into this order block here, which is it, actually right here. It's actually the whole candle, but coming into the order block here, maybe after that order block, and your OTE, you could have started to look for shorts back in this after this candle, seeing that we had a fair value gap there, which is why you see that signal there telling that price came into this area specifically and then rejected, came back up, pushed away, rejected, rejected. This, I mean, if you're not, this is not in the OTE area between this 50, 60 to 79. So would you have taken an entry like this? No. Here, perhaps if you're super late, maybe a scalp, something, not necessarily something you should be taking. Nevertheless, it did play out because of just the nature of the market and how it moved today. Is it something that you can repeat every day, taking trades all the way out here? Personally, I don't think so, but that's where your discretion comes in. Another entry there. At this point, add-ons should be in mind, not initial entries. So these are like entries you should be adding on to, not taking your first position, because we're just, at this point, we're just running. So then we get a pullback, another push down, pullback, and then we just rise for the rest of the day. And then not too much action, price action on in the PM session, considering how far and fast we moved. We didn't make it all the way to the second standard before we reversed, so it's always something interesting to see. But that is all for today. If there's any questions, you guys have any questions? So right now, right before Asia session starts, does it start at 9 or 8? But as of right now, you just see live. What do we see? Breaker structures to the upside, pullbacks from 6 p.m. We get the pullbacks. We sweep a higher time frame sweep a higher time frame swing structure, then we get a market structure shift, pull back, goes under a breaker, market structure shift. Breaker structure, market structure shift, entry. Not something. It looks super clean to me. Would I have taken it? Probably. I'm literally making this video now on a trade recap. So was I trading? No. But this is a nice example of something you would have taken right there. Following order flow. Something would have been something. But nevertheless, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the 21 subscribers and the support that you guys have given me. Like I said, I'm going to be trying to dish out daily videos, commentary on what's going on in the market, potential setups. If you guys are interested, like and subscribe, leave a comment, and if you're interested in the Discord and this indicator and future indicators I have coming out that are really, really useful, that I would definitely be utilizing during this volatility time to capitalize not only for your investments on day trading, but your long-term investments in buying this dip. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to position yourself in shares of these companies that are just at the cheapest prices that have ever been in the past 5 years. So really great opportunity. Take advantage of it. Make smart choices. I'm not a financial advisor. Seek financial professional help by a licensed professional. This is only for entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimers, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.